It was supposed to be an ordinary Wednesday morning. I had my coffee, my laptop, and a to-do list long enough to make anyone question their life choices. I was deep in a Zoom call with my team when my phone started buzzing. Once, twice, then again. I ignored it, thinking it was spam or a delivery notice. But when it kept vibrating every 30 seconds, I finally glanced at the screen. 6 missed messages, all from Karen. Karen was the self-appointed queen of our OA. Technically, she was the president, but she treated that title like she'd been crowned ruler of a small nation. I'd only lived in this neighborhood for 6 months, and in that short time, I'd already learned that HOA rules meant whatever Karen felt like enforcing that day. Her first message read, "We're conducting a surprise home inspection today. Please provide your garage code immediately." The second one came 30 seconds later. "If you fail to comply, it will result in a violation fine." I blinked at the screen, certain I was reading it wrong. A surprise inspection, and she wanted my garage code. I wasn't about to hand over access to my home to a woman who once left a note on my car because the tires were too dusty. I typed back, "I'm working right now. You can't enter my property without notice or permission." She replied instantly, "This is HOA property. All homes fall under community standards. I have the right to inspect." I muted my mic and rubbed my temples. Unbelievable, I muttered under my breath. 10 minutes later, there was a sharp knock at my front door. I checked my security camera feed, and there she was. Clipboard in hand, oversized sunglasses, lips pursed like she'd bitten into a lemon. She was already writing something down. Then she looked directly into the camera. "Open the door," she barked. "This is an official HOA matter." I stayed on mute for a moment, just watching her. My coworkers were talking about quarterly reports in my earbuds while, outside, this woman was trying to stage a neighborhood coup. Finally, I stepped away from my desk and opened the door. She barely gave me time to say hello. "Do you know you're in violation?" she snapped. I blinked. "Violation of what?" "The color of your shed," she said, flipping through her clipboard like she was reviewing top secret files. "It's too close to off-white. The guidelines clearly state neutral beige only." "It is beige," I said. She squinted at me. "No, it's eggshell. Don't argue." I resisted the urge to laugh. "Karen, I really can't deal with this right now. I'm working." "Then give me your garage code," she said, as if that made perfect sense. "I need to confirm there aren't any unapproved modifications inside." I stared at her, certain she'd lost her mind. "Inside my garage," she nodded. "Yes. I've had reports that you installed shelves without filing a property modification form." I laughed outright this time. "You're joking." "Do I look like I'm joking?" she said, adjusting her sunglasses. I sighed. "Karen, that's not how any of this works. You can't demand my garage code. That's illegal." "It's not illegal," she snapped. "You signed the HOA agreement when you moved in." "I didn't," I said calmly. "That's the best part. This house was built before the HOA existed. You guys annexed this section last year. I never agreed to any of this nonsense." Her face flushed red. "Everyone in this community is subject to HOA authority." "I don't think that's how authority works," I said. She started scribbling on her clipboard again. "I'll be noting your refusal to cooperate. Expect a fine for obstruction and non-compliance." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "You're welcome to call the police if you think I'm breaking a law, Karen. Otherwise, I'd like to get back to work." That didn't sit well with her. She tapped her pen sharply against the board and gave me a look that could curdle milk. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Maybe you're making it harder than it needs to be," I said. Her jaw dropped like I'd just cursed at her in church. "Excuse me, I'm just saying," I added. "You could send an email like a normal person instead of showing up at people's doors demanding access codes." She huffed. "I'm doing my job. If you don't like it, maybe you should move somewhere that doesn't have standards." "Oh, believe me," I said. "I'm starting to think about it." That made her pause. Then she smirked, clearly thinking she'd gotten the last word. "Good. We try to keep this neighborhood selective." And with that, she turned on her heel and stomped down the path toward her SUV. She muttered something about disrespectful homeowners as she went, and I just stood there in disbelief. As she pulled away, I caught a glimpse of the decal on her car door. "OA pras DMs comma wydine ASTO," and it looked like something she'd made at a print shop to make herself feel official. I went back inside, shaking my head. My Zoom meeting was still going on, but I was too distracted to focus. I messaged my boss that I needed 10 minutes and sat down with my coffee, scrolling through our neighborhood forum. Sure enough, There were half a dozen posts about her already that morning. One neighbor wrote, "Did Karen just tell anyone else they need to repaint their mailbox post? She said mine was aggressively white." Another said, "She knocked on my door at 8 a.m. demanding to inspect my fence for height violations. Is this legal?" The thread was blowing up with angry comments. Apparently, I wasn't her only target that day. A few neighbors mentioned calling the county housing department to file complaints. Others joked about forming a counter HOA, one that actually respected personal boundaries. I couldn't help but laugh. The absurdity of it all, the garage code demand, the paint color argument, the sense of power she carried like a badge, it was both infuriating and strangely comical. As I settled back into my chair, I heard a faint ding from my phone. Another message from Karen. Per HOA bylaws, this interaction will be recorded as a refusal to cooperate. I will submit a fine for obstruction shortly. I rolled my eyes and muted her number. But as I looked out my window, I saw her SUV slowly creeping past my house again. She was holding up her phone, snapping pictures of my lawn. I opened my door and waved sarcastically. "Need my Wi-Fi password too." "Karen." She ignored me, driving off in a huff. I shook my head, muttering, "This woman's gonna make me famous on some HOA horror story forum one day. If only I'd known how right I'd be." 2 days later, I woke up to a manila envelope sitting neatly on my doorstep. There was no return address, but the familiar, looping handwriting on the front gave it away immediately. Karen. I sighed before even opening it. It was too early for whatever nonsense this was. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and slid it open with a butter knife. Inside was a printed letter on HOA letterhead, though the logo looked suspiciously homemade, the kind you make with clip art and a Microsoft Word template. At the top, in bold, "No overembarrassing me on de down." I read the rest once, then twice because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. "As a result of your refusal to cooperate with the mandatory property inspection on Wednesday, the HOA president was forced to seek alternate lodging due to stress and unsafe emotional conditions created by your hostility. The amount owed for one night at the Riverside Inn totals $60.12. Payment is due within 7 days to avoid additional fees." I stared at it in stunned silence. She had billed me for her motel stay because she stressed herself out by harassing me. I laughed out loud, the kind of laugh that comes out when you're so angry you can't even form real words. My dog, Daisy, tilted her head at me like she couldn't figure out if I was okay. "No. Daisy, I'm not okay," I said. "We live next to a lunatic." I folded the letter and set it aside. There was no way I was paying a single cent. But I was curious. How did she think this was enforceable? So I decided to call the HOA treasurer, a mild-mannered man named Tom who seemed perpetually tired of Karen's antics. When he picked up, I could hear the exhaustion in his voice even before I spoke. "Hey, Tom, it's me, from Maple Lane." "Oh," he said, immediately sounding wary. "What did she do now?" I laughed. "That's actually why I'm calling. I just got a bill for $600 because Karen says she had to stay at a motel after I wouldn't give her my garage code." There was silence on the line, followed by a weary sigh. "Of course you did. So this isn't normal, I'm guessing?" "Normal," he said with a dry chuckle. "Nothing about that woman is normal. Look, you didn't hear this from me, but she's already on thin ice. Half the board's ready to vote her out. She's been sending out fake invoices to homeowners for months. We've got an accountant going through the books right now." I blinked. "Fake invoices?" "Yeah," he said, lowering his voice. "Claiming reimbursements for HOA-related travel expenses. Turns out she's been submitting the same receipts multiple times. Hotels, dinners, even spa visits. The only reason we caught on is because she accidentally billed the HOA for a manicure." I sat back in my chair, stunned. "So she's just been pocketing HO money." "Pretty much. We're in the middle of filing a report. You should hang on to that letter, though. It might be useful." I thanked him, hung up, and sat there for a minute, staring at the ridiculous invoice. The audacity of it was almost impressive. Karen didn't just push the line. She built a new line 3 miles past it and dared everyone else to cross. Later that afternoon, I decided to take Daisy for a walk around the neighborhood. The air was cool, the leaves had started to turn, and for once, I felt almost relaxed. A few of my neighbors were outside, and as soon as they saw me, they waved me over. "Hey!" called out Marcus, the guy who lived 2 doors down. "Did you get one of those letters too?" "About the motel?" I asked. He nodded. "Yep. She billed me for a consultation fee after she came over uninvited and complained about my recycling bin." Another neighbor, Sheila, shook her head. "She tried to find me because my curtains are the wrong shade of white." "I'm not even part of the We all laughed, but there was an undercurrent of frustration beneath it. Karen had been a nuisance for a while, but this was a whole new level. Then, as if summoned by the sound of her own name, her SUV came creeping down the street. Her windows were rolled up, but we could all see her eyes darting around behind those oversized sunglasses. She slowed down as she passed us, glaring like we were plotting her overthrow. Which, ironically, we kind of were. "She's up to something?" Marcus muttered. "Yeah," I said. "But I think her little empire's about to collapse." That evening, I was mowing the lawn when I heard sirens in the distance. At first, I didn't think much of it. Our street was usually quiet, but things happened. Then the sirens grew louder, closer. When I turned off the mower, I realized they were stopping at the far end of the block, at Karen's house. Curiosity got the better of me. I leaned on the handle of my mower and watched as 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing red and blue against her perfectly trimmed hedges. Karen was standing on the porch, phone in hand, waving her arms dramatically. Within minutes, 2 officers were talking to her while another started hauling boxes out of her garage. A few neighbors gathered outside, whispering. One of them, Sheila, had her phone out and mouthed, "They're arresting her." Sure enough, after a few tense minutes of discussion, one of the officers gently turned her around, cuffed her wrists, and led her down the driveway. Her face was pale with fury. Even from where I stood, I could hear her shouting, "You can't do this! I'm the president! I run this neighborhood." One of the officers said something I couldn't hear, and she went quiet, her jaw set in disbelief. They placed her in the back of the squad car, and she glared out the window like a villain in a soap opera. The news spread faster than a rumor in a high school hallway. By morning, everyone in the neighborhood knew. Someone had even posted a blurry video of her arrest on the local Facebook group with the caption, "Queen Karen dethroned." An official email from the HOA board went out later that day. Effective immediately, Karen's last name has been removed as HOA president pending an ongoing criminal investigation into financial misconduct. The board is working closely with authorities to ensure transparency and restitution. I printed out that email, framed it, and hung it above my desk, right next to the letter she'd sent me demanding $600. Over the next few weeks, the neighborhood seemed lighter somehow. People waved more. The tension that used to hang in the air like fog had lifted. The HOA even hosted a community barbecue, something Karen had always forbidden because she said, "Open flames lower property values." At that barbecue, Tom, the treasurer, stopped by my table with a paper plate full of ribs. "You know," he said, "you kind of started this." "Started what?" I asked. "The investigation," he said. "That letter you got, it was the final straw. We gave it to the police as evidence. Turns out, she'd been using the OA account as her personal piggy bank for over a year." I laughed, shaking my head. "Guess I should have given her the garage code after all." He grinned. "Then we'd never have found out what she was hiding." Later that night, I walked home under the streetlights, my dog trotting happily beside me. I looked up at my house. Quiet, peaceful, and completely mine. For the first time since I'd moved in, it actually felt like home, and as I passed the spot where Karen's SUV used to park, I couldn't help but smile. Justice, it seemed, had its own kind of curb appeal.